Hello and welcome to Caffeine Entertainment. I am Mental9R. In today's video, I'm going to be looking at my daughter's 3090 Ti. Used to be my 3090 Ti, and I passed it down to her around, over a year ago now. But the point being is, that thing runs really loud. Just after a few minutes of gaming, it will ramp the fans up to full speed and just sit there. Now, it's got to a point where if I leave the side panel on her case, she'll eventually just get a black screen. The system will hang, the fans are maxed out, and you have to power it off. So clearly, there's a heating problem. Now, the funny thing about that is when you look at GeForce Experience in the performance monitor, what you see is a GPU that's running 65 degrees, which isn't really that hot, in fact. It's relatively cool. So it's a little bit odd. So what I did was I took the card, I threw it into my PC where I have some more tools available, and I ran hardware info against it, and sure enough, the GPU hotspot was way hotter than what the card was showing just on the standard core temp. There was a 20 to 25 Celsius temperature variance, which is crazy. That should never be that much of a variance. So that's the goal today, is to figure out why that's happening, and hopefully with some luck and success and a little bit of ingenuity, we can come up with a way to fix it and get the thing running at a reasonable temperature, and she'll have her card back in functional condition. So with that, let's dig into it and see what we find. I wasn't going to record this, hence the reason why part of this is apart already. All the screws are laid out from where they came out of the card. But I thought maybe I will record part of it so you can kind of see it coming apart. Yeah, and I need to peel this sticker, careful, like so that I can put it back on again later. I'm just kind of anal that way. Don't know if it really matters, to be honest, but it's something I tend to do. I'm going to try this screwdriver, but I think it's too big. Yes, it is. I kind of like that one a little better because it's a little beefier, easier to hang on to, you know. But instead, I'll just do this one and take this apart. Hopefully this audio is working. I'm using a different mic, this little guy here, because my normal Elgato is kind of just in the way. So I did do a quick test beforehand. It seemed to be recording okay. I know my voice doesn't sound exactly the same. It sounds a little deeper maybe, I'm not even sure. But when I was messing with it, doing a comparison back to back between the Elgato and the other, that's what I found, was it didn't quite sound the same. So yeah, after I get this bracket off, I'll probably just cut to showing the end result and go from there. But yeah, see, that's coming off now. It's pretty heavy spring preload on these things, surprisingly. More so than the old days, that's for sure. But with screws to fall out, you can see the little pads on the back that sit against the PCB in this area. To keep it safe, I'll pop back once I've separated these two. Okay, so here we are looking at the PCB. Now you can see on this side, there's this sort of U shape right here, right there. And this particular part of the GPU is really dry in comparison to the rest of it. I'm not 100% certain this is where the hotspot resides, but when I've done a bit of research on it, apparently this isn't a totally unusual problem. And you end up with the clamp on these two pins, for some reason, wanting to squeeze the thermal paste away and over to this edge. And I can see the same thing on the actual heatsink. Now, the weird part about that is this side has only one chip on it. This side has, of course, 3 chips. Now, if you look at the heatsink down here, we have the 1, thermal pad that's there, and then the 3 over here. At first I thought perhaps for some reason this thermal pad here was just thinner, because I read that was an issue as well. And when I look at them, man, they look pretty much identical, to be honest. I don't see any obvious difference. It does look a little bit thinner perhaps, but honestly that could just be my eyes playing tricks on me too. I'm going to have to peel them off and actually measure them properly to be sure. If I do find there's a discrepancy, well then I'll order some new thermal pads and see what happens. In the meantime, what I thought I might do is throw a graphite thermal pad on instead of the actual grease, because the thermal pad isn't going to squeeze over from one side to the other, and it may provide a more consistent contact across the board. Because again, this card was perfectly fine when I first got it, but further review after a few months had gone by, it was pretty much any game that would cause the GPU to get hot enough to spin the fans at full speed. Now, when checking the GPU temps, they all look perfectly normal in the 63, 65 range, which is plenty cool. So I loaded up hardware info, and that shows you the hotspot on the card. And that's when I realized, okay, for some reason the hotspot temp is much, much higher than the GPU overall temp, like 25 degrees Celsius higher. So I'm going to have to assume the hotspot is somewhere in this area where the thermal paste is really thin. So that's the strategy. I'll see what happens. I'll throw a graphite thermal pad on it, and clean all this stuff up first, give it a good clean up, and put it back together and see what happens. Okay, so see, I've cleaned it all up. There's the nice shiny GPU, very reflective, nice and shiny. I've cut out the graphite pad, placed it there, just to kind of show you where it would be. What I'll likely do, and I don't know if I'll record this because it's rather awkward because the thing moves around really easily, and that would be, in order to place it, I'll probably have to set it on top of here and then gently set the heatsink down on top, and make sure it doesn't move. Do my best to visually watch as it comes together, but definitely not the easiest thing to put in place, but I've done it before. It's been successful, so hey, we'll try again. What's the worst thing that can happen, right? The GPU melts. Actually, it should have thermal protection and just shut itself off, but I'm going to do that, and I'll probably clip here and then start another clip just so I know where it is. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so here we are. I've got this loaded up. I'm just going to reduce. It looks like I might be clipping a bit. I have this kind of in place. You can see it moved without me really doing anything. It's very, very light. Okay, so this is in place somewhat. I've been trying to do this for a bit with it being visible on camera. I just don't think that's a reality. So I'm going to try and just set this down as carefully as I can and get the holes to align. There we go. I'm going to pinch it, flip it over so that it all stays together, and then set it back down. Yeah, it's an awkward little bear to get into place. So I'm not gonna mess with it beyond that. I was hoping to be able to come up with a camera angle where you could actually just see the thermal pad, like the graphite pad in place, but it's just not a reality. So it is what it is. Sorry about that. Was hoping I could show that a little bit better. As my dog sits over here to the side, she's getting annoyed, wants to have supper, even though it's nowhere near supper time. But I can start reassembling a bit. while I'm chatting, but I'll probably just be quiet and maybe just at best, if I leave this in, I'll just fast forward it all so that it's not just boring while I'm putting the screws back in. But yeah, that is, as they say, that is that. I gotta want to make sure I put this on the same way it was, and that way, not that it matters, I just want the sticker in the right place because I'm weird that way. This is actually surprisingly tough. Takes a fair bit of pressure to get this thing to go down. You really don't want to slip with the screwdriver. I'm a bit paranoid about that. Done that once before in 30 years of doing this type of stuff, and I sheared a couple tiny little things off the motherboard, and guess what? It was dead. That was a little different. I was trying to unlatch 3. Really? You're gonna sit there growling at me? Hopefully that's filtered. But yeah, I was trying to unlatch 3 graphics cards that were liquid cooled and joined together, and it ended up not going very well as my dog growls at me over there because she thinks it's time for food. Okay, so that's the back plate. Then this unit, there is a lot of screws that need to go into place, and all of these guys over here. I'm going to stand this on end to make that easier so they're not falling down onto the ground. I'll probably drop 1 or 2 because that's how I roll, but get those going. There's a couple of them in there, then at least the bracket's in place and I don't have to try and hang on to it too. Do that. Oops, of course that's magnetic. And what's the way? This screwdriver is easier to use. Pops, spinny. Okay, I'm going to finish these off camera, but that's the gist of it. Once that's done, throw the plugs back in the spots that I don't need. Okay, I'll be back. Okay, so all the screws are in. This is the 3090 Ti reassembled and ready to test. I got to put that little sticker back on, but other than that, she's ready to go. And yeah, this will involve me shutting my PC down and swapping the card, pulling the 4090 out, putting the 3090 Ti in, and seeing if she gets real hot again. Hopefully not, and hopefully the hot spot's in check and it stays quiet, because this was a really quiet card when I first got it. Okay, so I am back. I have installed the card into my machine. It is working perfectly like it did when it was new. Temperatures are looking good, and I will flip over to a view. You can see it's in there running. I do have a game running right now, hence the reason the fans are running. But currently, temps sitting at 61C, and the fans running at just under 1600 RPM, which is good considering it's pulling about 300 watts at the moment. And yeah, so I'll flip over to the actual game, and there you go. And you can still see PCs here, and you can see what it's doing. I've put it into windowed mode, 1080 or 1920 by 1080p. And you can see some of the stats here. The GPU is holding a steady 2040 megahertz, pulling just over 300 watts, 98% usage, which is great. And you can see my CPU here is working fairly hard. That's the 7800X3D. So I'll get into the game. Let me flip over to the window where I can actually see that. And where are you? Where are you, game? There you are. And I can escape out, and I'll just hit play, and we'll see what it does once I'm actually in and playing. I'm not going to really do much. I'll probably just walk around a little bit. I can't remember where I'm at the game at the moment anyway, but let's see what happens. It's got the settings that were for my 4090, but that was at a much higher resolution. So we should be good here. And looks like it's doing fine. Fan speed is actually slowed down. It's down to 1200 RPM. See, before at this point, the thing would have been screaming at over 3000 RPM. It was really quite annoying. It was almost unplayable. Just out of the sheer volume of it. Even with my headphones on, if I didn't have the noise cancellation ear cups on, it was very audible just in normal playing. And I just realized I have my TV going in the background, so you're probably hearing a bit of that noise. I'm going to turn that down, but I just have a couple hockey games going back there. So anyway, yeah, I apologize for the hockey game in the background. But you can see it's playing quite well, and a little bit of a stutter there. Not sure what that was about, but in general, 83 FPS. Definitely not as smooth as my 4090, but that's not expected, I guess, at this point in the game. But the card's working great, and I'm very happy. The graphite thermal pad has come through once again. If you can find them for a reasonable price, I do recommend them. They work really well, and you know I'll definitely follow up if for some reason the temps on this thing start screwing up again and get out of control, and fan speed starts ramping up. But I haven't actually checked. Haven't checked the hot spot temperature. Maybe I'll just do that if I can. Load up the app for it. One sec. HW info. There it is. You won't be able to see it, but I'll be able to see it. And we'll see what it says once it's loaded up. There it comes. And where's the hotspot? Hotspot temp. Yeah, like this is the big difference. The hotspot temperature itself, let me get back into the game here, is only 10 degrees difference from the actual GPU temp, a little over 11 degrees. The GPU temp is currently running at 54.8 degrees, and the hotspot temperature is at 65.8. So before there was a 25-degree spread, so this thing would have been just screaming its guts out, and rather annoyingly so. But anyway, it's definitely a massive improvement. And if you do have a 3090 Ti and it's a Asus tough gaming model and the fans are driving you crazy, it's most likely that is your problem. The thermal paste has squeezed itself off the one side, and it's just dry. So you got two options really at that point. Replace the thermal paste and fix your problem, or the other option would be to go with what I did and put in a graphite thermal pad. And I definitely do recommend the graphite thermal pad. Like I say, I've used them a lot. Well, a lot might be a strong word, but I've used it quite a few times, and it's well worth it in my mind to go that route. They're much nicer to use than your thermal grease, and you know, honestly, I'll probably be picking up a bunch more of them and slowly transition all my systems away from using thermal grease. Anytime I have to repaste something, it's just going to get a graphite thermal pad. So yeah, that's it. If you did watch this, I do appreciate it. As always, you know, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I've got a few other things I'm going to look at. I picked up this USB audio adapter that I'm going to try with my PlayStation 5. The whole intent is to be able to actually see if I can make my Xbox headset work with my PS5. So that'll be something that, you know, may interest you. I'm also going to do a review on these units that I was using for part of the video, and they're relatively inexpensive. I think this particular set was around $30 US, or sorry, $30 Canadian. And just a disclaimer, I did get this for free from Amazon to do a review. So, but I will follow up and do that as well. But yeah, again, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. I am Mental 9R, and this is Caffeine Entertainment.